Colleagues, it being 3:30, we'll convene this meeting. I want to welcome Minister Qualtrough back to our committee. Good to see you again, Minister Qualtrough. It's been a while.
It has, yes. Thank you.
You never phone, you never write. But it's good to have you here. Minister Qualtrough, I think you've appeared before enough committees to know the procedure. We'll be asking you to introduce the officials that are with you and then commence with your opening statement, which will be followed by questions from our committee members. So, Madam Minister, if you would care to introduce your officials, then begin your statement.
Thank you. So, hello, committee members. Joining me from Public Services and Procurement Canada are Les Linklater, Associate Deputy Minister, Human Resources to Pay Stabilization; Michael Vandergrift, Associate Deputy Minister; Marnie Muldoon, Chief Financial Officer, Finance and Administration Branch; and Andre Fillon, Assistant Deputy Minister, Defence and Marine Procurement Acquisitions Program. From Shared Services, we have Ron Parker, President; Sarah Paquette, Executive Vice President; and Denis Bombardier, Chief Financial Officer. So, may I proceed?
Committee members, just a reminder, we are televised. Please, Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, committee members, I welcome the opportunity to appear before you this afternoon to discuss the 2017-2018 Supplementary Estimates A for Public Services and Procurement Canada and Shared Services Canada. As many of you are aware, both departments play an integral role in the federal government by supporting the operations of other departments and agencies in providing important services directly to Canadians. To support those operations, we are requesting $185.9 million in Supplementary Estimates A, including $60.9 million for Public Services and Procurement Canada and $125 million for Shared Services Canada. Allow me to begin with our request for shared services. SSC provides modern, reliable, and secure information technology infrastructure services in support of the digital delivery of programs and services to Canadians. Of the $125 million that the department is seeking, $97.6 million will support projects that are mission critical to Government of Canada IT operations. Examples include the migration of key government applications that support services to Canadians into more secure and modern public cloud solutions or enterprise data centres. To date, the department has closed down over 160 legacy data centres that presented significant security and security risks to the Government of Canada and opened 3 enterprise data centres. This includes a new state-of-the-art facility in Borden, Ontario, which is the Government of Canada's largest enterprise data centre and the result of a successful public-private partnership. It requires no service disruptions for maintenance and provides greater physical and cybersecurity for Canadians' personal information. These supplemental estimates also include $14.6 million to expand and support information technology services at Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada. Ces investissements s'inscrivent dans l'engagement ferme.
These investments are part of the government's strong commitment to ensure that we are properly resourced in order to address evolving IT needs and opportunities. I'm continually impressed by the tremendous determination and hard work of SSC's employees in meeting the technology needs of its customer departments. Whether it's protecting government systems against security breaches, supporting our immigration officers at points of entry, or implementing the fastest recorded computer platform in the government to support timely and accurate weather forecasts and warnings, the department plays a crucial role in improving services to Canadians. But perhaps the best way to sum up the department's progress is by looking at its customer satisfaction survey results. Since 2015, customer satisfaction has been consistently trending upward, something I'm particularly proud of. This is a direct result of the hard work of SSC officials and appropriate government investment in the organization. From the beginning, our government committed to delivering common IT infrastructure that is reliable and secure, while at the same time providing departments what they need in order to deliver services that are timely, citizen-centered, and easy to use. And that is exactly what we are doing.
And Procurement Canada. As announced in Budget 2018, responsibility for the Building Canada Innovation Program, or BCIP, will be transferred to Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada at the end of the fiscal year, as part of a broader initiative to streamline and simplify the suite of innovation programs across the federal government. Of the $60.9 million we are requesting for the department, $39.8 million is for the BCIP. This money will fund the first of 4 years for the renewed BCIP program, so we can build upon its success and meet those high demands going forward. As this committee heard directly during the procurement study, BCIP helps Canadian businesses bring their innovative projects or services to market. It does this by matching them with federal departments and agencies that can use a company's product, helping to bridge the pre-commercial gap by providing innovators with a successful first real use of their pre-commercial innovations. 353 contracts worth $163 million have already been awarded under this program. 80% of the firms that benefited from the program brought their products to market, and 78 of those products have been exported to 48 countries. Simply put, we know the program works and the volume of submissions is rapidly growing. I can tell you that we are encouraged by the increasingly high demand for this flagship innovation procurement program. And on that note, I'd like to thank this committee for their recommendations on procurement modernization, including BCIP. I now turn to our request of $13.6 million for continued efforts to stabilize the Phoenix pay system. This request, which includes $11.8 million transferred from last fiscal year, will fund ongoing functional and technical support to the pay system. This work is within the scope of the contract between the federal government and IBM. It also includes $1.8 million for funding to increase support services to employees with pay issues with within PSPC. This item represents PSPC's portion of the $25 million announced in Budget 2018 to hire more staff to support employees within the department on human resources to pay issues. As I've said before, I remain fully committed to ensuring that Canada's public servants are paid accurately on time. There is no greater issue that continues to face the public service, and our government has no higher priority. That's precisely why we have significantly increased our capacity to address employee pay issues. Since Phoenix was launched, we have nearly tripled the number of compensation staff from 550 to over 1,500. This includes the 700 positions eliminated by our predecessors. This is but one of the suite of measures we put in place to stabilize the pay system. Nous mettons aussi en place des façons.
We're also implementing innovative ways of working, including a new approach called pay pods, which I described during my appearance before you in May. Contrary to last year, we are no longer diagnosing the problem. We are rather optimizing our systems in order for them to respond to the personnel needs of the pay centers and the users of the Phoenix pay system. Teams group together pay specialists who work exclusively for the department and who are dealing with the backlog. With regard to the departments involved in the pilot, we have a substantial reduction in the backlog, and the number of employees with pay issues has dropped significantly. We are now in the process of implementing pay pods across government. We are rolling out pay pods so that by mid-2019, all 46 organizations served by the Pay Center will be transitioned to the pay pod model. As of October 2018, half of all Pay Center employees are now served by a pod.
To see a steady decline in the case backlog. In fact, we've seen more than a 21% reduction in the queue since January of 2018, even as we've taken on additional work to process $1.5 billion in retroactive payments for employees. Said differently, we've been able to decrease our queue of transactions awaiting processing by about 130,000 transactions. Even greater improvements are seen when we focus on the departments with pay pods. Since January 2018, pay pod departments have seen a 23% decrease in backlogs. We are optimistic that our efforts will continue this positive trend. The next item I'd like to discuss is the $5.5 million we have requested for the Federal Contaminated Sites Action Plan. That amount would be transferred to 2 Alaska highway projects. This important roadway stretches nearly 2,500 kilometres across northern British Columbia and southern Yukon into Alaska and is key to the economic prosperity of the regions it serves. This funding will help us to continue to ensure the highest standards of safety and environmental responsibility as we undertake important renovation work. The last of PSPC's requests is $2.5 million to better support the Government of Canada's Digital Advertising Fund. The fund is administered by the Privy Council Office in accordance with Treasury Board Secretariat policy and managed by my department through our online advertising unit. Created in 2013, the Digital Advertising Fund aims to use digital advertising to communicate with Canadians rapidly about major announcements and priorities, including unforeseen issues. The increase in funding would allow departments and agencies to better communicate on emerging issues related to things like health and safety recalls. Mr. Chair, as you can see, PSPC and SSC have diverse mandates, and the nature of our funding requests reflects the numerous ways that our departments touch the lives of Canadians. Je suis fière du rôle unique de nos...
I am proud of the unique role of our department, and I'm deeply grateful for the talented and dedicated public servants that have brought their skills to PSPC and SSC. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Before we commence with questions, I just want to reconfirm you're with us for the first hour, I understand. Your
Yes.
officials will be with us for the last hour.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We'll start with our 7-minute rounds, and Madame Ratenzi.
Thank you, and thank you, Minister, for being here. I know that the sub-As have already been voted in the House, but I'm glad that you're here because we have a few questions that arise from your presentation. You are requesting $11.8 million for funding the functional and technical support to the pay system. And I understand that the backlog has dropped by 130,000 since January 2018. Could you explain what efforts are taken to further reduce the backlog quickly?
I thank you for your question. So as I said in my speech, we are taking a real client-centered approach to addressing pay issues. We've recognized that it's better to address employees as a whole and deal with all of their individual transactions, and that is what's happened through the PayPod model. And I will remind this committee that it was in fact employees in Miramichi that came up with this concept in the first place. I'm very pleased that it is rolling out as successfully as it has. We are trying to bring departments online as their capacity, as quickly as we can, as their capacity permits. And we intend to have PayPods serving all departments serviced by the Pay Centre early spring of next year. May of next year? Depends how you define spring, I suppose, but May of next year. I don't know, Les, if you'll add anything?
Well, we're also continuing to maintain and increase our capacity in terms of human resources, both in Miramichi and our regional offices. But an important development over the course of the last year has been the establishment of our client contact center in Gatineau with 200 staff who have access to the Phoenix system and to the case management tool, who are now able to provide first point of contact response and assistance to staff who are calling for a certain number of transactions.
Thank you. So your budget also includes the 700 employees that were fired by the previous government. You have rehired them?
Yes, so we have increased capacity, as I said, from the 550 that were in place when we launched Phoenix to approximately 1,500. Certainly not the exact individuals, because some, of course, had moved on or retired, but we have replaced those individuals, yes.
In terms of your PayPods, the initiative you said has been suggested by the employees themselves, and you are rolling out PayPods to all 46 organizations. By when, approximately?
Well, as of October of this year, so just last month, we have PayPods servicing approximately half of the clients serviced by the Pay Centre. So 110,000 approximate employees. By next May, all of employees serviced by the by the Pay Centre will have PayPods in place.
Can you give an update on how you plan to roll out those PayPods? Because you suggested that there's been a decrease in backlogs by 23% through this PayPod system. Is it the combination of PayPods and customer services that you have adopted?
Right. So Les and his team have done a lot of work to identify the operational readiness of a department or an agency to be able to deliver through the pay-pod model. And working with departments and agencies have basically determined a rollout list of when a certain department or agency will be getting a pay-pod. And the very interesting thing about the pay-pod model is it's quite nimble in the sense that it responds to the needs of the individual agency or department. I don't know, maybe you can give an example. Some are serviced internally, like it's very agile almost.
Well, indeed, for Pod Zero, the pilot pod that was set up about a year ago, December 2017, we have been keeping with the principle of new never becomes old. So as new intake, new transactions come into the pay center to the pod, those are dealt with first, and with any spare capacity that the pod has over the course of a pay period, those resources are directed then to the priorities of the individual departments, as the minister flagged. Some departments choose to do more complex cases, others look at older cases, but really they set the priority provided we are able to stay on top of the new intake.
And so this, the Phoenix system has been giving a lot of constituents a lot of headache, especially the CRA and the T4 slips. Now that we are coming to year end, could you tell me what work is being done for the upcoming tax seasons and what lessons have been learned so that our constituents are not crying and being chased after by CRA?
So we're definitely building on the improvements and the lessons learned for the past 3 years, and we have for some time. In fact, I'm not sure the work ever stopped from last season, been preparing for this season that's upcoming. CRA, TVS, unions, employees themselves, we've all been very focused on ensuring that we address any potential issues with T4s, whether it be employees identifying overpayments or anything else the like. Les, is there?
We have a very detailed operational plan with CRA and our partners. We have been doing dry run testing already to be able to produce the T4s in February. We've put an operational freeze on any further system changes during the period between now and the release of the T4s to ensure that system stability is there and the inputs that we enter into the system will result in appropriate and correct T4s for staff. Also working with unions and Treasury Board Secretariat to make sure that staff are aware of what their responsibilities are around reporting overpayments and getting ahead of that curve to ensure that we're lowering the stress and providing an opportunity for staff to repay net overpayments as opposed to the gross.
So the technical issues that were there in Phoenix, are they still remaining? And does IBM continue to be a good partner when it comes to addressing Phoenix's issues?
Yeah, so we definitely...
If you could keep it to about a 30-second answer, Minister.
Yeah, we definitely have a close working relationship with IBM. We've set up a technical experts committee with IBM and Oracle and the departments, and it's a cross-department initiative that ensures that any technical issues are addressed immediately and don't become problems, and it has worked quite effectively.
Thank you very much. Mr. McCauley, 7 minutes, please.
Great. I think everyone welcome back. Most of you have been before us before. Minister, can you explain why your government still has not released the RFP and the draft RFPs for the Canadian Service Combatant to the PBO?
It's my understanding that arrangements have actually been made now between D&D. I understand that question was asked of the President of the Treasury Board, okay. And now arrangements are being made.
Okay. When will it be released to him?
When will it exactly be released, Michael?
I think they're working out the arrangements around the management of because of the sensitive information in the RFP. So there has been exchange of the correspondence with the PBO on this from the Deputy Minister of Defense.
The RFP and the draft RFP to the PBO? He has top clearance. There's nothing in there that can be hidden from him that's not too sensitive for the PBO to see. When will it be released to the PBO?
All I can tell you, sir, is that D&D and PBO are working out those details right now.
Okay. Because last we checked with the PBO, which was very recently, D&D has refused to release it.
As of this morning, my understanding is they're working out those details.
The Deputy Minister has written to the Parliamentary Budget Officer offering to provide the RFP and making arrangements around people have particular security clearances.
Will they release the draft RFP as well?
The RFP for service combatants.
The RFP and the draft RFPs?
That will have to be worked out with the Deputy Minister and the Parliamentary Budget Officer.
Okay.
The request has been for the RFP, as I understand.
Do you find it acceptable for the largest spending project in Canadian history that has taken so many years, so many requests for your government to respond, to provide the RFP to the PBO? You've even stated it as a challenge in your NSS annual plan about project budgets, etc. Why so long? And do you find it acceptable?
I'm not sure I would characterize it as either unacceptable or acceptable. I wish these things could go quicker, but right now we're at a point now where that information is being exchanged.
Okay. Now the PBO is in his report on the combat ships. It says it's going to be about $250 million added costs from inflation, etc., for every month of delay. Do you agree with that assessment?
Is that what we've assessed it at?
And we're aware of the assessment, and obviously the budget for the entire project is with the National Defense and their Chief Financial Officer. They also have their own calculations that they use, and in reality, if you look at the size of the contracts, the size of the project, in the $50 to $60 billion range with inflation, their assessment, I think, are fairly close to what the PBO has been coming up with in terms of his own assessment.
Okay. When are we actually going to start cutting steel for the frigates, please?
Pardon me, for the
Cutting steel?
for the CSC?
When are we going to start?
In 2025 or 2026.
Okay. I think last time you were before us, you said 2021. So now it's...
Did I? I apologize. Delivery is 2025, 2026. Cutting steel is 2021.
It's in the...
Are you sure on that? Can I ask when you received updated information? I'm looking at the British T-26 project. They're much further ahead of us. They're not planning delivery till 2025.
Early 2020s.
So how is it we haven't even got a contract yet, and we're going to leap ahead 4 years ahead of where the British are?
So we are, as you may have heard, we have identified a preferred bidder in October. We are in the final throes of the negotiations, a phase that we call conditions precedent phase, where we look at intellectual property capability. And so we are expecting, if everything goes well, to award the contract to the preferred bidder early in 2019. From there, the next phase will be the design phase, which...
I understand all that. Yeah. When are we going to start? Soon,
early 2020s,
if we grant the design in early 2019, when are we going to start?
So after a few years of the design phase in the early 2020s, we expect to cut steel with the first deliveries.
Early 2020s, I'm not asking for what part of the decade. What year can we expect to start?
So once we have the first step, once we have awarded the contract with the ship designer, we will obviously plan the next few years of work of design. And until we have these first engagements and with the actual contract awarded, we will be able to refine the schedule. So we're expecting 2 to 3 years of design work before we can actually cut steel. So let's say early 2019, 2022, cut steel with a delivery of 2025 timeframe. But again, at this stage, we have identified a preferred bidder, but we have not sat down and awarded the contract. So
2022 at the earliest?
I would say so, yeah.
Okay. The 3 icebreakers that we bought from Sweden, 18 years ago, according to the public security documents released by BNN, they stated their value for the 3 icebreakers was $68 million. Now, we know there's been no significant upgrades to those icebreakers in the last 18 years. So after 18 years of wear and tear, we purchased them for, I think it was $660 million. Do you believe we got the right price for them?
Andre?
You can take that.
We did do analysis of the costing, including getting third-party expert advice when entering into the negotiations for those, and we do believe, based on that advice, that we did get...
Who was the third party, please?
It was a firm... what was it? I can't remember the name. I will get that to the committee.
Did we look at leasing the 3? Because I understand that was the original plan, was to lease the 3.
The Coast Guard did look at leasing, in the end decided that the better objective was to purchase so that they can maintain that ship through its life.
It was a Coast Guard decision to purchase and not to lease?
At the end of the day. The Coast Guard decision, they in the end decided they would like to have a purchase so that they can maintain that vessel as part of their fleet through the remainder of its service.
Great. Now, in public accounts this week, or last week rather, senior procurement officials suggested that from public, PSBC said the government was looking at moving the aerospace engineering test establishment out of Cold Lake to Ottawa. I'm just wondering, Minister, if you support this move.
I am very concerned with making sure we have the right facilities in the right regions of our country. And if the advice and the decision is that it's a very difficult decision because I have a daughter who went to Cold Lake and I understand the implications, but if that's where it needs to be, that's where it needs to be. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Blakey, 7 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. I was wondering, in the supplementary estimates, is there any money set aside to reimburse Canada Post workers who are on short-term disability during the rotating strike?
No, there is not.
Do you think it's fair that they should go 5 weeks without they're already on making 70% of their salary because they have a work-related disability? Do you think it was fair that they didn't get paid for 5 weeks?
It has to do with the fact that when the decision was made to do the rotating strike, the collective agreement effectively terminated, and as a result, the benefits under that agreement terminated. So I don't think it was fair at all.
That was a decision that the corporation made. They could have decided to carry on with those benefits, and in fact, it's a decision you could have made.
And in fact, they did carry on with some of the benefits. They continued on with the disability benefits. Yeah, but there are a lot of people who didn't get
paid their short-term disability benefits, and do you think that that's fair?
Short-term disability continued for individuals who were on short-term disability, as I understand it.
That's not our understanding at all from the many people who wrote me.
I can get that clarified to my understanding.
On short-term disability.
Okay.
So then the question becomes, why is it? I mean, we brought this up in the House. Why didn't you get on the phone to Canada Post Management and get the answer then, and reinstate the benefits for those people? We know that under the Canada Post Corporation Act, the corporation exercises its powers and duties in a way that it will comply with such directives as the minister may give to it. So I mean, why did you not see a need to tell your corporation not to cut off disabled workers during a rotating strike? To be clear, Canada Post workers weren't out every day. It was a rotating strike. So in any given region, you've got maybe up to 4 days that Canada Post workers weren't working, and every other day they went into work, they delivered the mail, and they got paid. But the people who are on short-term disability, who are already only collecting 70% of their salary, didn't get paid at all. How are they going to make that money back if government doesn't reimburse them for the money they lost during that rotating strike?
My understanding is that most benefits continued, and Canada Post put in place a process by which employees could make requests for special compensation, and none of those requests were denied.
Why do you think they should have to ask for special treatment when those are benefits that they're entitled to?
All they literally had to do was make the corporation aware of their loss, and they would have been reimbursed.
Except that the corporation decided to make a mean-spirited decision as a tactic to try and break the strike, one that you endorsed by doing nothing.
I don't characterize it that way, sir.
Well, I do, and so do the many postal workers across the country. Are you not listening to them? Are you only listening to Canada Post Management?
I think we've done a very good job over the past year of working hard to repair the relationship between management and union that had been significantly fractured in the decade before.
Well, I'll tell you what, when workers went back
have set
after
Canada
you
Post
legislated them back to
for
work.
a new vision that puts service to Canadians first.
Well, when Canada Post workers went back after being legislated back by your government, one of the first things they found out was that despite the fact that there were only maybe several days during the 5 weeks that the rotating strike was happening, the Canada Post was telling them that for the accumulation of their personal leave and their vacation leave, they were being told that for the entire 5 weeks, Canada Post was going to dock them from their personal leave and their vacation leave. Now, you tell me, as the person responsible for Canada Post, how you think that's going to improve labour relations between Canada Post Management and the workers.
Well, I can tell you there's definitely the relationship is not where it needs to be to move forward with.
So why are you letting your management poke them in the eye when you say you want better relations?
I have every confidence in the newly established leadership of Canada Post. We have a brand new board and a brand new chair and acting interim CEO, and they have done a significant amount in terms of addressing the needs of Canada Post employees.
Well,
and
what I'm telling you today,
whether it be bullying and harassment or addressing issues of overtime, they are moving ahead on these really important issues.
What I'm telling you today on behalf of the many postal workers that have contacted my office, so it's not coming from me, is that when they reported back to work, because they were required by your law to report back to work, one of the first things they heard was that Canada Post was going to dock their personal leave and their vacation leave for the entire duration of the strike, notwithstanding the fact that almost every day of that strike, they went into work and they reported to work. And that's a consequence of your legislation. Your legislation specifically exempts the entire strike period for counting against that accumulation, never mind the fact that they were going to work. So how do you think you're going to improve labor relation management and get a negotiated solution when you allow your management, as their first act after legislating those people back to work, to poke them in the eye? How do you think that promotes better labor management relations?
I appreciate and sympathize with the toll that the labor dispute has taken, particularly
They don't need your
on
sympathy.
Well,
they need you to do something about a management that repeatedly decides
This is
to
not the
poke
Canada
and prod
Post
them and
management
take
of
them
times
on.
past. This is a
Well,
new
actually,
Canada Post management.
if you talk to the workers there, they'll tell you it is.
Look, I know how passionate Mr. Blakey, you and others are when dealing with this. This was a long simmering dispute, and I can understand all of that, and I can understand why the questions you were posing to the minister are such that it may tend to inflame the emotions again of members around this committee or members of the union. However, all I'm suggesting here, sir, and to the minister, is that we continue to do what we always do at committee and treat all of our witnesses with respect. The questions should be direct, should be aggressive at times if you feel so that they should be posed in such a manner. But I would also ask the minister to answer direct questions with direct answers if possible. But I'd like to keep this on a level that is respectful of both the minister and the witnesses along with her. Mr. Blakey, you've got about 2.5 minutes left.
Thank you. I'll come back to a comment that the minister made about, this isn't the Canada Post of years past. One of the things that Canada Post is paying for right now with interest is a decision to deny Canada Post workers their sick leave during a previous rotating strike and subsequent lockout, and then they were legislated back to work. And after years of significant costs to the union representing those workers and to the corporation itself, an arbitrator determined that actually there was an acquired or vested right to those benefits, and the company was not within its rights to deny those benefits. Now we've seen something similar happen with respect to the short-term disability plan. And so when people who've worked there, because there's many people who worked there in 2011 and many people who work there today and span that whole period, when they look at what happened in 2011 and they look at what's happening now, Canada Post management is adopting the same techniques. They decided to take away sick days, which was what obtained at the time in 2011, and they decided to go after short-term disability, which replaced those sick days now. So when they look at that situation, they don't see what's different. Canada Post engaged in the same kinds of strike-breaking tactics in 2018 as it did in 2011. So why don't you explain to those people who don't see it in their daily work life what exactly you think the difference is between Canada Post management techniques in 2011 and Canada Post management techniques today?
Thank you. Well, I am of the firm belief that Canada Post management is behaving differently than it has in the past. We gave a very forward-looking mandate to the new chair in January of this year that corresponded with our service-focused vision for Canada Post. We put at the very top of the list to improve relations, as I indicated, were fractured between management and labor. I know personally, when I have met with unions, the leadership of CUPW in particular, they are grateful for some of the initiatives that management has taken, as I referred to, particularly with respect to bullying and harassment and dealing with a very clunky past process on overtime that the CEO, that she was the chair at the time, had dealt with directly. I think it's unfortunate.
One of the major issues has been that Canada Post uses mandated overtime repeatedly.
Fortunately, I have given some additional time for my intervention, but we are out of time for this intervention. We'll now go to Mr. Jahari. 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to welcome the Minister and the staff. Minister, I'd like to start by asking you a clarifying question. While Minister Bryson was here on his estimate, our colleagues from the other side indicated, and one may say that insinuated that you denied the request to release the CSC RFP to the PBO. I've had the opportunity to review the transcript and did not see that the request was made to you at any point while at this committee. I wanted to give you a chance to clear this up, and I'm going to ask the specific question. Have you been asked by the PBO to provide the CSC RFP, and if so, have you done that?
As to the best of my record, I have not been asked to provide that, no.
Okay, thank you. Going back to your initial comments, opening remarks, you indicate that 353 contracts worth $163 million have been already awarded under the BCIP program. 80% of the firm benefited from the program, and 78 of those products have been exported to 48 countries. This is the great work that's been done on the innovation side. I'd like to talk about ask you a question about the defense procurement. Opposition often poses potential challenges or highlight potential challenges, yet does not talk about some of the significant achievement we've made under our procurement program, especially defense procurement program, helping our men and women to ensure that they're well equipped with what they need. Can you highlight some of those specific achievements under the defense program?
Thank you. A lot of work has gone on both behind the scenes and in delivering for Canadians in defense procurement, and it started really with the robust work and consultation and technical expertise that went into the fully costed defense policy that we have, strong, secure, and engaged. We also have a defense investment plan that lays out the planned investments in defense procurement for the next 10 years, which allows businesses in particular to anticipate what will be needed by the military so they can make strategic investments in their own innovation and R&D. We've also delivered, we've launched the Future Fight jet procurement for the 88 replacement jets, and we expect the delivery of our first interim jet next year. The first large vessels are in the water that were designed and built under the NSS. We've launched the first offshore fisheries and science vessel. We've launched the first AOPS. We've done a contract for purchase and sale of a fixed-wing search and rescue aircraft. We've selected a preferred bidder for the Canadian surface combatants. We've issued an advanced contract award for the maintenance of our frigates. We've cut steel on the first joint support ship at Seaspan. We announced that we will build a 6 AOP. We've got new tactical armored patrol vehicles, new military pattern trucks, and new equipment for the Canadian Rangers. We've actually delivered a lot in defense procurement.
Great. Is there any numbers or percentage that your team can provide? How much of this procurement has gone to Canadian businesses?
Michael, can you?
Percentage or dollar
Sorry,
numbers?
I don't have that number in my head.
I think what's important to also note is when we do the procurement for the large defense contracts, we do invoke what we call the industrial technological benefits, which requires suppliers to invest the equivalent amount of the contract into the Canadian industry. So we see a lot of work here being done in Canada, directly or indirectly related to the contracts that are awarded.
Yeah, if you could provide the committee with an example and a percentage of how much is gone, would be really appreciated. Minister, following up on the passion demonstrated by my colleague, Mr. Blakey, I'd like to talk about that we recently passed Bill C-89, and this bill was quite different than a previous bill, C-6, that was passed in 2011, and it had a lot of positive and different approaches into how we bring back to work legislation. I would like to ask if you could highlight some of those positive or different approaches.
Thank you. So in June of 2011, CUP W workers, they ran rotating strikes as part of a labor action. Within 2 weeks, the Harper Conservatives, less than 2 weeks later, Canada Post locked out CUP W workers, and the Harper government passed back-to-work legislation. This, as the courts described, was very heavy-handed legislation that mandated wage increase. It mandated the kind of offer that the arbitrator must receive, and mandated the term of the contract. It was quite prescriptive in the way it outlined how the process would proceed. In contrast, in terms of the current environment, we have been assisting the parties for over a year in this labour dispute. We didn't run to, and Canada Post never locked them out. We didn't run to legislate quickly. We waited as long as we thought we possibly could. And the legislation itself is as opposite as you could possibly get than the legislation from 2011. It did not dictate any terms for the contract. It set out a process. It set out a process where we would once again try mediation, we would move to arbitration, and we would give the arbitrator the absolute discretion to determine the process and the way that arbitration would go down, not single offer arbitration. And in addition, the parties have the opportunity to submit names for the mediator, and the Minister of Labour will go to the chair of the Industrial Relations Board if there wasn't one upon which the parties could agree. So it was very much laying out a process instead of dictating terms.
Thank you. I got about 40 seconds left, which I return it back to the chair.
Mr. McCauley, we're now into 5-minute rounds, and you're up.
Thank you, Minister. I just want to start. Alberta's been beaten enough with the economy and the layoffs. I'm just disappointed that the government would decide to hurt us further by moving jobs out of Cold Lake into Ottawa. Just getting back to Mr. Jawari's comment, just to clear the record, it was myself asked for your intervention to release the RFP. We've asked twice. We've asked Mr. Bryson and we've asked Minister Sajjan. We actually just followed up with the PBO, actually, and we just got an email back that they have not heard on anything from D&D about getting the RFP. So maybe I can ask you to provide us who from D&D you spoke to and when the information was provided.
Yeah, I apologize. I can't explain that.
Sorry, not at this time, but maybe you can get back to us in the second round because I have other questions. Minister, Matthew Matchett, who is alleged to be behind the supply ship leak, was hired after the alleged leak to work for PSPC. Can you speak to any details that you have on his departmental transfer into PSPC and if he's still working in PSPC? Because he seems to be disappearing from GEDS.
Thank you.
Just briefly. I can speak to the issue. Mr. Matchett is in fact an employee of PSPC and he has been suspended.
Okay. Was he removed from GEDS on purpose then for that reason, or?
I would have to get back to you with more detail on that, but he has been suspended. When was he suspended? Why was he suspended? Not at liberty to get into personnel management issues. Oh. When? When? I don't have the exact date, but we can again provide that to the clerk.
Yeah, maybe if you don't mind. Now, Minister, Dave Perry, Vice President of the Canadian Global Affairs Institute, from a 2018 report, and I want to quote from Prime Minister Trudeau wants to see his defence policy implemented as outlined. He needs to change Canada's defence procurement system to enable it to spend procurement money at the rate projected in SSE. He also at that time provided in his report very clear information that there's no possible way to actually achieve SSE with the current spending. So I'm wondering, do you agree with Mr. Perry's statement that we need to change our defence procurement system?
I agree that we need to make our entire procurement system more efficient and less clunky for sure, and I think we've taken some really important step towards that. I'm going to ask Michael to explain the risk-based authorities. It's a very important distinction. I think you'll be pleased with it.
30 seconds at the most, please.
Okay. Yes, as a strong security engage is a challenge for all the departments involved. We are working on some improvements to streamline defense procurement. One of the significant initiatives we have undertaken is to move, for example, authorities for ministers in departments to award certain contracts.
Have you seen Mr. Perry's report showing the massive gap between SS and our strong security engage and what the estimates are showing, what the bus and the budget's showing, that the two of them don't align?
We're aware of that, and
do you
again,
agree with that?
We're aware of it. We know.
Mr. Phelan, are you saying Mr. Perry's incorrect, or is he correct?
No, he is presenting facts as they are.
Thanks. That's just what I wanted to know. So at SSE, we are challenged with the slow procurement, and does not reflect reality of our ability to purchase items. That's what I want to get at. Do you believe that we need an overhaul of our procurement system, Minister, for defense?
Well, as I said, part of my mandate letter is, in fact, to modernize our procurement, and that would, in large part, include defense procurement, because it is absolutely clunky and, at times, prohibits getting the equipment we need quickly.
I think we'll agree. Now, Minister, do you support this committee in undertaking a comprehensive study on the state of the more critical aspects of the federal defense procurement process, not specific projects as such, but the process, to review the problems facing industry and government and how we can resolve them?
I would definitely encourage your committee to prioritize your business as you see fit, and if that is what you deem to be a priority, I would support it. Okay.
PSPC has, you've commented on there's funding in the estimates to develop simpler and better procurement. There's funds for allocations and Treasury Board central votes, SUP-A's under this. Now, it's been almost 4 years since this government's taken over, and it's clear that the issues of our defense procurement system are deeply embedded and will not be fixed with Band-Aid solutions or simple adjustments. As such, as the matter at hand, and given that I don't have time, or I don't want to take up too much time on the committee's time, I'm going to move a motion, please, that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, that House of Commons Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates, the committee conduct a full-scale study of the state of the more critical aspects of federal defense procurement to review the problems facing our procurement process and how to resolve them, as well as study options to streamline our processes for industry and the public service, that the committee hold no fewer than 10 meetings, the study begin no later than February 4th, 2019, and that the committee report its findings to this House. Now, I will state for the record that I'd like to go immediately to a vote. If the government decides to adjourn this motion, then I will accept, or we will believe it's a simple refusal of the government to accept the study and move forward on this issue. For debate.
We're open for debate now. I'm looking for speakers on the speakers list. Mr. McCauley, you have the floor.
I'm fine.
That was it?
That's it.
Pardon me? Please, one at a time. Mr. Peterson.
Just a procedural clarification, if you would, Mr. Chair. Was this was this motion given on notice, or is this the notice now that we're receiving? I'm not familiar with this motion.
The normal 24 or 48-hour notice had not been given, but this would be considered, in my opinion, and I have consulted with the clerk on this, a subject at hand. In other words, if you are introducing a motion about a subject which is currently being discussed or debated, which this seems to be, particularly since we've had questions on defense procurement from both the government and the opposition side, I consider this motion to be in order.
And I'll give the floor.
Pardon me, Mr. McCauley?
I just have one comment to make, then I'll relinquish
the floor is yours, Mr. McCauley.
Thanks.
Looking for a speaker. We have Mr. Peterson on the speakers list next.
As I mentioned, we don't want to make this a project-specific, but an overall review. We've heard from the minister that she supports such a study. I would hope that the government members agree that we can move forward with this very important issue. And I relinquish the floor.
Mr. Peterson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And just to, I'm going to move that the debate now be adjourned on this motion.
That motion is in order, which requires an immediate vote. All in favor of the motion to adjourn the debate? Opposed? Motion carries. Now, I'm looking at, there we go. We've got about 12 minutes left before the minister has to go, and we are now on the speakers list at Mr. Peterson. Mr. Peterson, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the minister and our witnesses for being here today. When Mr. McCauley, I think, first started his last round, he asked a question dealing with D&D and PBO communications, I think, and you weren't able to answer or weren't given the opportunity to answer. I wonder if you have an answer now, and if you'd like to answer it, otherwise we can.
I had answered previously that I didn't recall being asked that, but if I certainly can be corrected on that, and we will definitely. I don't understand why there's an information discrepancy, but we'll figure that out for sure.
Okay, thank you for that. Just wanted to make sure we got that clarified. I'm going to talk a little bit about the estimates and the request for some money to shared services, and a lot of that has to deal with, and there's a $125 million request, and I think almost $98 million of that deals with projects that have been characterized as mission critical to Government of Canada IT operations. Just taking a step back on that, who makes the assessment whether something's mission critical or not?
Mr. Chair, the mission-critical applications are determined by the departments that use them based on a set of criteria, usually around health, safety, national security.
Okay, thank you for that. Just wanted to get some background on that. Part of that is the new data centers. One of them is not far from my riding at Base Borden. So am I to understand these are up and running and functional now and operational?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so is a portion of that money just going to the usual operations of these data centers?
I'm going to ask Mr. Bamboje to cover the specific uses of those funds.
Okay.
The project, the money goes towards the building the infrastructure, so that's the main use of the money. And after that, on an ongoing basis, on the establishing the IT equipment, and on an ongoing basis to maintain that equipment and to provide a service associated with the data centers themselves.
Okay, thank you. A lot of this money and a lot of this new technology is meant to provide better services to Canadians and increased turnaround times, etc. And the way I think your department measures these consumer satisfaction is through a survey. Can you mentioned it a little bit in your opening statement about the customer satisfaction survey results. Can you elaborate on that and what progress these are showing, if any?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We've made real progress in terms of improving our customer satisfaction, and this is really attributable to our employees and their hard work along the way. The index of customer satisfaction is up about 30% since 2015, December 2015, from 2.79 to 3.62 in September, and reflects better service, faster service, and more service to departments. For example, the volume of service requests is up roughly 20% so far this year, so demand is growing.
For that. Also, Minister, in your opening comments, you alluded to the Build in Canada Innovation Program, BCIP. My understanding is that that's being transferred to ISED at the end of the fiscal year. So that I think there was a request for 60 some odd million for that department, and almost 40 million is for the BCIP. What is that money going to be used for?
Excuse me. Thank you for your question. The money will be used to fund BCIP projects. And BCIP is a really successful program in which innovators submit ideas, and they are tested by the National Research Council to determine whether they are truly innovative. About 1/3 or so are deemed to be innovative. And under the program, it links up these innovations with departments to test and trial them. So in essence, these companies with their innovations get their first customer, and their first customer being a government department. It gives them the benefit of both having their product in use, but also the benefit of being able to say that they have a customer in the Government of Canada for further commercialization and marketing of their product. So these funds requested as part of the supplementary estimates are to fund those BCIP projects. And then those will eventually moved over to ISED next year, and then they will fund that as part of the Innovation Canada suite of programs.
Thank you very much. Gilles Dettel, 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Minister, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. Before beginning with my questions, Mr. Chairman, I find it rather surprising and unfortunate, I would even say, that members opposite refused the motion tabled to delve into very relevant issues pertaining to the Defense Department and the expenditures relating to what it is doing. It's very unfortunate that this debate was refused. Minister, I would like to discuss with you the matter that's at the heart of the defense strategy in the North, the Diefenbaker program. As you know, it's an immense project, the Diefenbaker project. It's worth billions of dollars. When it was announced in February 2013, it was to cost $720 million, and it was supposed to be in the water in 2031. And now we're talking about $1.4 billion, and the deadline is 2033. So the budget has been multiplied by 2, and the project has been postponed. Have we started to cut the steel to build the Diefenbaker? If not, when will the first cuts take place?
Program of work at Vancouver Shipyards. We're working with the shipyard on the program of work right now. The schedule that you identified remains the schedule at present. There are projects that need to be completed, though, in advance of the Diefenbaker under the current schedule as laid out. So that project remains as you described.
2023.
I believe that's the date. I believe that's the date. So
we can verify.
We can verify and come back to you.
Come back to you on the exact date here.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we're talking about something very, very important now. So do you think it could be a good idea, because there is some rumor about that project, that it could be done somewhere else, in another shipyard? What do you think of that?
I think I should be speculating about that. Right, the project right now is part of the umbrella agreement that is with Vancouver Shipyards under the National Shipbuilding Strategy.
So if I may add to that, is that the premise for the National Shipbuilding Strategy was to give the shipyards that were involved in a large ship construction a program of work over several decades, so that they could actually make the investments, become world-class, and then deliver ships on it. And part of the umbrella agreement with Vancouver Shipyards in Vancouver includes that program, and again gives some returns on investment for the efficiencies that they have to bring into the yard.
Le mot est faible, Monsieur Filion. Écoutez, on parle de doubler la facture.
Some is a weak word. We're talking about doubling the bill and postponing things. No one has undertaken anything to launch this program, and now you're saying that it's all right. We're chatting with people. So I put the question to you again. Do you think that we can pursue the program as is? Could we not envisage carrying it out elsewhere?
I would say this is the kind of conversation every day that we have in terms of how we deliver the ships that are part of the program. I think it's fair to say that in the last 8 years since the program has been announced and the contracts have been awarded, that there's been a lot of lessons that have been learned in terms of the optimism for scheduling and costing that we are correcting as we go along. It's also fair to say that we've put a lot of risks behind us as the shipyards have reinvested, brought new workforces. They've also put in new equipment in their yard and now are building ships. Going forward, I would have to say to you as we are updating our schedules and our cost estimates, that those lessons learned and that experience is helping immensely. But yes, there have been some optimism in the original estimates for all of the programs that are being delivered under the National Shipbuilding Strategy.
So now my question is directly to the Minister. What do you think of that project? Double the size of the budget, from $700 to $2 million to $1.4 billion. It was supposed to finish in 2021, when now we're talking about 2023. What do you think of that?
I wish that more accurate costing.
30 seconds, I'd appreciate.
Sorry, I wish more accurate in costing and scheduling had been done initially when the NSS was put in place years ago. But as was said, we are constantly updating, learning from the, as we said, optimism of early estimates.
Are you happy with that?
I'm glad that we now have more accurate numbers and timelines.
Thank you. Minister, before I go to our next intervention, which will be M. Drouin, you'd indicated you could be with us for an hour. We have, if we wanted to complete a full round of questions from committee members, we would have approximately 8 minutes left, 5 minutes from M. Drouin and 3 minutes, Mr. Blakey. Would you be able to stay for that additional time?
Yes, I may.
Thank you very much. Mr. Drouin, 5 minutes, please.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's always a discussion ongoing between the person opening the mics and myself. We didn't vote against the motion. We just voted to adjourn the debate, and the only reason for this is that we were taken by surprise. And normally, there's a spirit of cooperation here on this committee, on committees generally. So we will consider the motion, and we will have the opportunity to check and see if, yes or no, the motion suits us. So thank you very much to all of the witnesses who are present with us today. Minister, the Phoenix Pay system, well, I have questions about it for you. I know that in Sub-A, you're asking for $13.6 million to stabilize the Phoenix Pay system. And there is one number that concerns me. It's the $1.8 million to fund the growth of support services for employees encountering pay issues. Did employees use these monies? Have the requests been made by employees to use these funds? Because I imagine that there were problems.
We announced $25 million to support departments in addressing their Phoenix issues. The 1.8 is PSPC's share of that $25 million. Am I correct?
That is correct. And just to note that the Treasury Board Secretariat does have a claims office that's been set up to help employees who have suffered out-of-pocket expenditures as a result of Phoenix to deal with those hardships.
OK, donc par contre, c'est le...
So it's the department that has to cover these claims? Even its Treasury Board? As the Minister explained, these monies were distributed to the department in order for it to help its own staff navigate through the system. Beyond that, we have the claims office under Treasury Board to provide assistance and provide money to those who had unplanned expenses because of the Phoenix issues. In your statement, Minister, you also mentioned that since January 2018, there has been a reduction of the backlog of some 21%. I know that we're going to move forward carefully. Are we expecting similar reductions over the next quarter, for example? 21%, is that every month? Is it going to be quarterly? Are there going to be more reductions over the summer, over the fall? Things will change with the pay pods.
And agencies into the pod system, we get better results for those departments and agencies. So in departments and agencies, as I said, that have been in pods longer, such as those in pod 0, which was last November, we have a more significant decline in the backlog than those that are not being serviced in that model. We anticipate stabilization to follow that same trend. So if I had to predict, I would predict that the departments and agencies that are in pod 0 will achieve stabilization, i.e. get rid of the backlog for their departments in a corresponding kind of flow of the pod rollout. If that makes sense, I apologize.
Okay. Puis justement, ces équipes mixtes.
And these pay pods, these teams, since their establishment, you mentioned that 23% of the backlog was removed. There's been a reduction of 23%.
To sound as cheeky as this might come across, but a year ago, my constant, I would say, nagging would be fair, was that we had to find a way to keep the numbers from going up. And right now, my constant nagging is about how do we get the numbers to go down more quickly. And that's a much better place to be in than we were a year ago.
Puis juste, je sais qu'il me reste pas beaucoup de temps. Juste.
I don't have very much time left. So before concluding, we know the Treasury Board has taken new measures it's planning for a new pay system because this one is going to become obsolete at some point in time. Is there good cooperation with Treasury Board and your department? Absolutely. We're doing this together. Absolutely. We have a lot of experience with pay administration, so we have regular contacts with Treasury Board in order for them to learn from our experience. Thank you.
Mr. Blakey, please.
Thank you. I'm certainly going to take Mr. Drouin at his word that if Mr. McCauley moves his motion again, he won't have any reason to vote against it. Madam Minister, in Clause 6 of the Back to Work legislation, it extends the provisions of the collective agreement, but it excludes the period for which there was a strike. It doesn't make any distinction between a rotating strike and a full-blown strike. Do you think that it made a material difference to the operations of Canada Post that the strike was a rotating strike as opposed to a full strike?
I would suggest that the uncertainty and the economic impact of the rotating strikes were quite significant.
You don't think there was a difference between what would have happened to the mail under a full strike as opposed to a rotating strike? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
No. I would assume, although having not lived it, that.
So why do you think it didn't make a difference for people on short-term disability that their pay was completely suspended for the 5 weeks if Canada's Post delivery was not completely suspended for the 5 weeks? In fact, not even close.
I don't think I can answer that question to your satisfaction, sir.
Could you commit to reimbursing those folks on short-term disability who didn't get paid at all for 5 weeks, despite the fact that the operations of Canada Post continued and the mail got delivered?
I can't make that commitment at this time.
Well, I think that's unfortunate to hear because that's exactly the kind of commitment I think those people are owed. I mean, you know, the delivery of the mail and the profits of Canada Post were not suspended for 5 weeks. It makes no sense to me why your government would choose in the Back to Work legislation not only to have agreed with the decision in the first place, but then to protect the company within your legislation, your government's legislation, from having the union be able to take any action retroactively, because that's what Clause 6 of your agreement does. Why was that provision included in the Back to Work legislation?
I unfortunately don't know why it was or wasn't. We'll have to confirm.
So you're the
with
minister
Department
responsible for Canada Post.
I am, and
you don't know why clauses were included or not included in the Back to Work legislation for Canada Post?
The Back to Work legislation was within the responsibility of the Minister of Labour.
Am I to understand that you, as the Minister for Canada Post, wasn't consulted on the Back to Work legislation? And as a member of Cabinet, I mean, even just as a member of Cabinet, was there not a Cabinet discussion about the Back to Work legislation where you reviewed the various clauses of the legislation?
Can I answer now?
Yes, please.
Okay. So what I will tell you is the Minister of Labour, as the lead on the Back to Work legislation, absolutely will work very closely. We work very closely together. I'm hesitant to give you a rationale for when I don't have that information in front of me as to why we chose specific wording or a specific clause or not, but I can definitely get that information to you.
Well, I think it would be important, particularly in light of the fact that the company is now using that clause in order to deny an appropriate accumulation of personal days and vacation days to workers that are back.
Thank you, Mr. Blakey. Minister, thank you for being here. I understand that you have other commitments.
I do, thank you.
Colleagues, we will suspend for about 2 or 3 minutes. We ask the officials to remain seated, and we will reconvene as soon as we can. We are suspended. Colleagues, we are reconvened. We will not have any opening statements since we were provided one by the minister. We will directly go into, colleagues please, we'll directly go into questions, 7-minute rounds, and we will begin with Madame Mendez. 7 minutes please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to all of you. A warm welcome. We have had a few exchanges with the minister, and I would perhaps like to delve more into the detail, especially with regard to Shared Services Canada.
$4.3 million under votes 1A and 5A to address the program integrity issues. And I would like to ask you if you could address the specificities of those integrity issues and what exactly are we talking about when we talk about integrity issues, if I may?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. Happy to provide some detail. I may ask my colleagues to add in. The program integrity issues that these funds are intended to deal with relate to principally software operating systems that are going out of service in 2020. We need to replace those, plus equipment that is past its end of life and needs to be replaced to sustain this critical service delivery to Canadians.
This is all over government departments?
This is across all government departments, yes.
And we're talking from the average laptop or desktop to
we're talking
servers
about not at the desktop level per se. This is the background infrastructure in terms of servers and storage and networking, security devices.
Softwares too?
Software in terms of operating systems that enable those servers, for example, to function.
And how? Okay, this is a lot of money. If we can, and I understand this is the kind of technology that costs a lot of money. But is this planned to be rolled out just during this next fiscal year, or this current fiscal year rather, or is this something that will roll out into the next fiscal year?
Well, in broad terms, there's an infrastructure replacement program that's required over time. Imagine if the Government of Canada's total IT infrastructure were, say, someplace in the $4 to $6 billion range. Given the depreciation rates of IT equipment, that would imply something in the neighborhood of $750 million to $1 billion of replacement a year, just to give you a sense of scale.
Okay. And does this also touch any of the technologies used by defense, for example, or is this strictly for the other departments
we supply,
other than defense?
Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
We supply technologies to the Department National Defense as well as other departments outside of the command and control necessary for military operations. The Department of Defense continues to control that as well as their top secret IT infrastructure.
So that you wouldn't touch that area. If I could go to the federal pay system, that obviously is not a resolved issue, but my colleague, I think Mr. Peterson asked before that we are looking already at a replacement system, a new system that will eventually be brought in to replace Phoenix. Would you have a timeline for this? Is there something that, in the current requests for allocations, what is the timeline that is in there for the replacement system, if I may, Mr. Linklater?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Treasury Board Secretariat was allocated $16 million over 2 years in Budget 2018 to explore options for software to replace Phoenix. So the work that has been undertaken now by the Chief Information Officer, Alex Benet, is really focused on identifying through an agile procurement process appropriate softwares that could potentially handle HR management for the Government of Canada.
So am I to understand that we are avoiding the RFPs, very descriptive RFPs, and we're not saying that, we're saying we need this objective, what do you have to offer us? Is that more or less what we're going into? That's good to know. It's a little progress compared to what it used to be. Yes, what we were before. So the pods, again, going back to the pods, and I do think this is something that warrants more congratulations in finally having a system that seems to get resolution to a lot of the issues. You are telling us that the final departments to enter into the pod system will be coming in May 2019.
The 2 more waves of deployment. The next will be in February, and the final will be in May. As you can imagine, as we staff up and build human resources capacity, we also need to ensure that we have appropriately trained senior staff who are able to act as team leads, coaches, data analysis support workers within the pod to help direct each of the work. So we are now going through a number of processes to ensure we have the qualified staff available to take those leadership positions as we staff up with more junior compensation staff who would help with the pods.
Would that imply moving or using, if you wish, staff that is currently in the pods to train the new ones coming into pods, or using those that have already been working in the pods to transfer to leadership positions in the new pods, or a mix of both?
More the latter, but very judiciously. We don't want to disadvantage or see any recul if by moving qualified staff out of a pod that's functioning well too soon. So there is some exchange of skills, but the real one of the exceptional innovations from the pod is the cross-training that happens with the staff who are brought in. We've seen over the course of the last year that staff who are recruited at fairly junior levels are able to double, if not triple, their competency within about 6 to 8 months. So the cross-training and the support of the pod through the mentors, the data analysis, is helping to broaden the skill sets.
Would it?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Monsieur Filion, j'aimerais revenir.
Mr. Filion, I would like to come back to the Diefenbaker issue that we delved into earlier. You said correcting as we go. Could you elaborate further? When we talked about the Diefenbaker, it was mentioned that the cost is going to be double the initial estimate, and you said correcting as we go. What do you mean by that?
And the National Shipbuilding Strategy approved in 2010, 8 years ago, contracts awarded to the tune of about $8.8 billion since then. And I talked specifically about the estimation of cost and schedule that took place in preparation for the announcement for National Shipbuilding Strategy and the initial estimates that were made. Since then, as I said, first of all, a lot of the risks have been put behind us as the shipyards have stood up their workforce, they've invested. Ships are now being produced. There are 3 offshore fisheries science vessels in construction, 1 launched on the West Coast. There are 3 Arctic offshore patrol ships in construction on the East Coast with Irving Shipbuilding. As this experience is obtained and gained, and as the Government of Canada experience is also improved, I think that it's fair to say, and having been in this business for several decades, that there's a lot more sophistication, a lot more accounting of risk, and in estimations that are now done for the future. Not to say, though, that it's without risk going forward. When we're talking about, warships, there's not very many things that anybody can undertake that is more complex than building a warship. So as much as we do factor risk, there are the unknown unknowns that we will continue to face in the future. But I would say the level of sophistication has improved significantly. And that's why I meant as the corrections that are being made as we go forward.
So do we expect any other correction, as you say?
I think you can never say never in this business. Again, as we talk about the complexity and the size of a project like the Canadian Surface Combatant, I don't think anybody I've ever met working internationally and working in Canada who can actually predict all of the risks that will exist or materialize or not materialize in the future. We do factor them into the estimates, but we are facing issues as we go. And for example, some of the projects that we have delivered over the years where a failure of a system during testing can set you back financially, can set you back schedule-wise. It's something that cannot be predicted per se, and that's why you do testing.
Yeah, but it could be a never-ending story. You know, public money is not a buffet. It's not a blank check. We're talking about a real project. I know, and I do recognize that it's huge. It's security. We're talking about warship. I do recognize that, but we're talking about double the price, $7 to $1.4 billion. It's too much. And what you're saying to us is not very, it's not a good assurance for us. Talking about never say never. Well, sorry, sir, but I'm afraid.
Again, having been in the business for several decades and having delivered successfully many projects, and every day we work in this business, there are thousands and hundreds of projects that nobody hear about that are delivered successfully. But what I was trying to say is that as you go along with developing new weapon systems, there are things that can happen. For example, I was giving an example on an armored vehicle projects that occurred a few years ago where a steering system issue appeared and set the project back for several months. Those are the kinds of things that I cannot stand here and tell you for sure that everything will unfold exactly as has been planned. However, as I said, the sophistication in the planning has improved to factor in some of these unknowns.
So my main concern is that this is not a blank check. And hearing what you say, if I was the shipyard builder, I would say, well, it's party time, because it's never say never, and it's the correcting as we go. So this is open door to blank check. I'm very concerned, but I have some other issue to address on that. Mr. Van der Grift, maybe you can join in the conversation. But I talked about a few minutes ago about the fact that there is some rumor saying that okay, maybe we could do it somewhere else. Well, now I'm not talking about rumor. I just ask you a clear question. Did you have any conversation with C-SPAN or someone else about building the Diefenbaker elsewhere?
We are in conversation with C-SPAN on a weekly basis, and again, we want to go back with the umbrella agreement that we have signed with C-SPAN, which does include the Diefenbaker, or the polar icebreaker is what we call it. And it is part of a program of work that the Coast Guard is planning to do. So it is part of the program. It is a signed agreement that we have with the yard, and we are moving forward so that they can do the planning long-term for it. Just to go back to the issue of cost.
Mr. Fillon, just a clarification. Did you have any conversation to move Diefenbaker elsewhere, yes or no?
No, we don't have, no. Okay. Again, we have a signed agreement. And I just want to go back to the cost, if I may.
Sure.
There's one issue of costing and precision of costing. There's also another issue of affordability, which is constantly being had. Okay, and those are kind of two things. First of all, you have to have the discipline, the mechanisms, the processes to come to the appropriate costing, and then what comes out of that, in some cases, are cost increases, and I talked about some of the early optimism. But with that always comes a question of affordability, and we have these conversations between departments, and we have conversations obviously within the government of Canada. And at the end of the day, it is the Coast Guard, it is National Defence, the Royal Canadian Navy who have to be able to afford these ships and make sure that they are getting them at a price that constitutes value for money.
Thank you. Mr. Blakey, you're up for 7 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Recently, public sector unions have started talking about an offer that the government put on the table, and that amounts to a 2-year effective wage freeze, which has upset some, particularly in light of the troubles with Phoenix over the past couple of years. Is a lack of confidence in Phoenix to be able to deliver on pay increases affecting the kinds of offers the government is prepared to make?
Well, we certainly have a lot of learned experience from our efforts to implement the 2014 round of collective agreements. We are providing that advice to the Treasury Board Secretariat, and clearly through the governance structures that we have set up over the course of the last 24 months, which do include the unions. I meet with them every 6 weeks. Their views on trust in the system are well known to us. What's happening at the negotiating table, I'm not at liberty to discuss. I'm not privy to those conversations.
How many new cases is Phoenix generating each month? So notwithstanding whatever might be in the backlog, how many new pay issues arise each month?
I would say on average, Mr. Chair, we're seeing about 80,000 transactions, new transactions entering into the system at the pay center every month. Outside of the pay center, I would have to verify those numbers.
And so those would be 80,000 transactions where there's a problem or difficulty with pay?
Not necessarily
overpay,
a difficulty
underpay?
with pay. Okay. It could be flagging an HR event such as someone going on leave or taking an acting assignment, but something that would have an impact on compensation.
Okay, so in terms of pay issues where there's a problem that would require resolution at some point, how many new cases do you see in a month?
Well, I would say that the backlog represents a significant number of outstanding pay issues, and as we're working through that, the complexity comes to light. But
what I've heard from public sector unions is that whatever's already in the backlog, notwithstanding, that there are new pay issues that need resolution, not just because somebody's going on leave and right. Phoenix has flagged it, but because there's actually a case of overpayment or underpayment. Mm-hmm. So in terms of problematic pay transactions that will find their way to the backlog if they're not addressed immediately, how many new cases do you see in a month?
Well, with any large system on the scale of the pay system, it's not unexpected to see errors that do arise. And when we do see issues that result in an outcome that is not foreseen, that would generate what we call an incident report, which is then immediately dealt with to be able to address the issue in the system, and then remedial action would be taken on the file.
So how many new ones of those are you seeing in a month?
Well, I would say at this point we have about 1,000 outstanding incident requests that relate to some sort of issue that has come up in the system. But in terms of parsing the number of transactions that relate to an error as opposed to a delay in processing, I don't have those figures.
Okay, so if somebody from the public sector union that's dealing with their members on a monthly issue who are saying, mm-hmm. hey, I got overpaid or underpaid, mm-hmm. is listening today, and they hear you say it's about 1,000 new cases a month, do you think they're going to feel like that's the right answer, or?
Those are the number of incident reports that we have. The number of cases could be much higher. If there are processing issues, if a file isn't loaded, if we do have a technical glitch or a network outage, the number in any given pay period could be higher.
1,000 certainly sounds low to me from what I've heard. So I'm wondering if I'm not using the proper term of art to elicit mm-hmm. the appropriate answer.
Well, I feel
like we might be two ships passing in the night right now.
Well, I think the terminology would relate to whether or not there was an error in the pay, or if there was a delay in processing a transaction that has an impact on pay.
Okay, and so what does that mean for the average? Like, what does that difference mean if I'm working for the public sector and I get my check? In terms of whether I'm getting paid properly or not, whether it was an error or a delay, what does that mean for me when I get paid? Am I seeing what I should be seeing on my check, or is there a problem? That's what I'm trying to get at.
If there is a delay, it doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem. But if there is something like an overpayment, clearly that is a problem, and there are processes to deal with those.
Okay, and you're telling me that would be in the order of about 1,000 new cases a month?
I would say that relates to the number of incident reports. The number of cases could be higher.
All right. I'm going to be honest, I'm not exactly sure what that means. Which is unfortunate because I want to know from the perspective of people getting paid when they see their check, does it look right to them or not? Mm-hmm. And I'd like to know about how many people a month are having the experience that it doesn't look right or not. And I'm not sure how to navigate your terms to get that answer. So if you can help me, that'd be great. Mm-hmm. If you're going to reiterate what you've said already, I can move on. I'm looking to you for direction.
Base pay is provided every 2 weeks. If an individual feels that he or she is not getting what is owed, they can report that. They do report that, and that gets escalated either through the Client Contact Center or through our escalation unit at PSPC. We do investigate, but we do ask that the severity of the issue be assessed before it comes into us, so that we can ensure that those with the most severe financial hardship are dealt with quickly, and then those with, and I don't want to diminish this, sort of lower level financial issues, we will get to those as we work through the higher priority first.
All right, I'm going to move to my next line of questioning, which has to do with looking at alternatives. Now, I've heard that the CRA does have a payroll system in place that is not Phoenix. It interacts with Phoenix or works with Phoenix, but it's not exactly Phoenix. That it's having a higher rate of success than Phoenix, and there are some that feel that that could be adapted well enough to serve as a replacement for Phoenix, and that would be a lot quicker than starting from whole cloth on a new system. Is that, so when you're asking for money in the supplementary estimates to explore new systems, how much of the resources available for developing a new system are being invested in exploring that option seriously versus looking at developing a new option from whole cloth?
It's a wonderful question, but unfortunately we have no time for the answer unless Madame Yip wants to cede some of her time to allow you a chance to answer. But Madame Yip, you're up for 7 minutes, please.
No, I don't think I'll be sharing my time today with you. Thank you very much for coming. My first question is in regards to Shared Services Canada, the supplementary estimates A for capital expenditures. Why is it minus 25, well, almost 26 million?
Mr. Bombardier?
Yep.
Are you able to find the figure?
Not quite. There's in subs A, we have the main negative amount is a vote transfer. Actually, it's an internal transfer between votes. So it means in plain language, it means that we're transferring some money from our capital expenditure to our regular O&M expenditures. So that's, you can see that on the subs A. That's a main.
There's a transfer. Okay. So moving on to, can you explain what the funding for core information technology services is for, what it involves? For core information technology services?
This is the main item under this 2.5 million is actually the charge that for every TB submission that goes in front of the Treasury Board, there's a charge for per FTE that's being allocated to shared services, and that represents the majority of that amount. Okay. So it's $700 per FTE, actually.
Okay. So moving on to my other question for core information technology services, what does that involve?
Again, the per FTE chart covers the laptop that every employee is getting when he's for every new employee, and that everything that an employee requires from SSC to be able to perform his work in terms of computer, phone, and.
For Mr. Chair, if I may. So, for example, a new employee comes in and they need a new workstation spot, and that requires new cabling, new phone line, those kinds of expenditures. Every time there's a new or a move, that could also entail a refit for the IT technology. That's covered by the $700 per employee.
Okay, thank you. And so with 3 new enterprise data centers, I'm just wondering how they're going to avoid the fate of the security and service risks of the 160 closed down legacy data centers. What safeguards will be there to guard the privacy and security breaks? And do you have enough funds allocated for safeguarding that?
Mr. Chair, there's the government has made significant investments in cyber and IT security since 2016, and the funds allocated to the enterprise data centers are very much intended to better secure the data and the functioning of those IT systems in them. They are, to start with, in terms of the physical layout of those data centers, they are physically protected, segregated, and in a way that the old data centers were not. They are not, for example, incorporated in commercial buildings. Because of this as well, they have dedicated power supplies, dedicated heating and cooling, dedicated telephone lines and communication lines. All of this builds the redundancy of those enterprise data centers. As the minister said, another feature of them is that they do have built-in redundancy. So if there is a failure of a power supply system, they have 2, 3 more generators to pick up the need to run for a long period of time. In terms of the IT security, it is built in by design with following the Treasury Board policies around the security, and then furthermore, all of the technical controls that we receive from security agencies. These are modern, state-of-the-art data centers that will protect the data of Canadians.
So just following up in the first round of questioning regarding the federal contaminated sites, how many contaminated sites does PSPC have responsibility for, and how has this number evolved over the last 10 years?
I don't have the number count of the sites with us, but we'd be happy to provide that.
The funding here, if I could, is for 2 sites associated with the Alaska Highway, and it's moving funds from last year into this year for the 2 projects in that area. The two major, Alaska Highway is one of the major federal contaminated sites that PSPC is working on its remediation.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I was able to find some information relevant to your question, ma'am. So you may be well aware that the Federal Contaminated Sites Action Plan has been going through multiple phases. This is the 3rd phase of the funding. So under this particular phase, we're managing 46 different sites through the remediation process. And the segment that Mr. Van Griff just walked us through was there's 2 fairly significant contamination areas along the Alaska Highway. We were to have dealt with them by now. The action that you're seeing here in these supplementary estimates is to have moved the funding through the delays because of the season so short along the northern reaches, to move that funding forward to the years in which we'll be able this year and next year, to deal with those 2 sites. So I hope that answers.
Thank you very much. Mr. McCauley, we have you for 5 minutes, please.
Great, thank you. Mr. Linklater, we discussed this in an earlier meeting about, I think there's a Treasury Board kind of direction not to go after people who've been phoenixed for overpay until they've been made whole. I'm getting still a lot of calls at my constituency office of this happening, PSPC asking for money, withholding money for overpay when they still haven't had their T4s fixed from 2 years ago. Is that just an oversight, or has the policy changed? Do you know?
Policy hasn't changed, so if there are issues in constituency offices that you're experiencing, I would invite you to provide those lists of those individuals to me, and we'll look into those cases.
Great. I just want to get back to the gentleman, just regarding the purchase of those 3 tugboats / icebreakers. You know, again, 15 years ago, they were worth $60 million. We're paying $858 million. You said it was Coast Guard wanted to buy them instead of leasing them. Is it common to give Coast Guard the ability to overrule such decisions, or is it common to give them the final say on that, or what oversight went into this when we could have leased them, because that was originally planned. We could have leased them probably for about less than $10 million a year for the 3 years it would take to build brand new ones for the less than the $600 million. that we are spending on 15 to 18-year-old ones?
So every time a decision like this is made, there is a business case that is done by the Navy and the Department of National Defense, if it's a Navy capability, or by the Coast Guard. What goes into these business cases is obviously the cost of that are available open market, but there's also third-party reviews that are done of these to look at different ways parametrically.
Will you be able to make that business case public?
Sorry?
Would you be able to make that business case public to us or to taxpayers?
This would have to be asked by the Coast Guard, and again, those are part of the decisions that are made for these kinds of capabilities.
Let me just skip to my next question. 2016, the government announced out for the combat frigates where we're going to go to a existing off-the-shelf design. Of course, we haven't. What changed, or when did we make the official change to allow paper designs like the T-26 to submit a bid?
So as I said earlier, I think I mentioned that we have selected a preferred bidder as part of the competitive process.
I know that, but please just, I don't have a lot of time. Just when did we change the policy? Because it was announced, ICANSEC, off-the-shelf design to save money and time. Now we're going to a paper design, which is going to take longer and be more expensive.
So fundamentally, the requirements of the Navy are established, and the procurement process was built on meeting those requirements. I think it's fair to say that any warship, Canadian surface combatant that we select will require some sort of work done to it. And there was a threshold established for the level of maturity that the design would have to be deemed acceptable, and that has been established early on, as you said, in 2016. So
right, but in 2016 we said off-the-shelf design, T-26 is not. I'm asking when we decided to move away from that. Was it the Navy said, well, an off-the-shelf is not going to be satisfactory, we need to expand it?
So
just when?
Again, this is a procurement that's still in process. We haven't not landed yet on the final decision. We are in negotiation with the preferred bidders. I need to caveat that before I talk further about that.
Let me just, I just have a couple other questions. I'll be out of time.
Sure.
When are we going to see updated costing on the frigates if we do go with the T-26? Because of the added weight, it's about 1,200 more tons displacement than original guesstimates for the other two competing bids. So that's going to add about 13 to 15% cost. Plus the $250 million a month delay from the 2021. I don't see you starting and I don't see you have to ready 2021 to start. When are we going to see updated costing? You said the Navy's working on it. When will we see public?
So the costing was rebased as.
I've got about 30 seconds left for your answer.
As part of Strong, Secure, and Engage last year.
No, when will we see updated costing, please, on the frigates?
The frigates budget was rebaselined as part of Strong, Secure, and Engage last year when the government announced the acquisition of 15 surface combatants. There has been some work done as part of that costing to take into account the uncertainty of not knowing yet which design would be selected.
So SS&E already covers all these, the uncertainties, the delays, and everything else?
Yeah, the costing that was done by National Defense in preparation for Strong, Secure, and Engage does account for uncertainty, not knowing yet which design is to be selected, and also the fact that some of these designs, even independent. Okay, all right, I'll stop here.
Thank you.
Otherwise my microphone will be disconnected. All right. Good.
My understanding is there are no more questions coming from the government side. Mr. Doan, am I wrong?
Just one question, Mr. Chair. And then I give the time to Ms. Mendez. 5 minutes, eh? My question would be for Mr. Vandergriff. I just want to go back to the whole issue with the CSC RFP and PBO. Is there any evidence that you could show to us that any correspondence between the government and PBO that we could see, that we've tried to share this information, or we requested some information, or we've tried to attempt to communicate with the PBO?
Thank you for your question. I could table with the committee, if the clerk and the chair so wish, copies of a letter from the Deputy Minister of National Defence to the Parliamentary Budget Officer of November 22nd, 2018, offering to make available the RFP for the Canadian Surface Combatant and offering to work out the arrangements for making that available to the Parliamentary Budget Officer.
Great, thank you. That's my Christmas gift. I'm done, and I'll wish you a happy holiday. Thank you.
You as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again for your patience. So I'm going to pick up on Mr. Blakey's question about the CRA model, because we love to learn from best practices, and I mean, at least I do. First, I consider the pod system a best practice, and I do think that whoever came up with this idea deserves a lot of credit for the idea. I personally come from the community sector, and we tend to be very versatile in the community and do a lot of things at the same time and learn about a lot of things. So I do believe that flexibility and complementarity in the way you execute tasks is an excellent way of working, generally speaking. So perhaps eventually taking this pod system to a permanent model for the Human Resources Department would not be a bad idea. That's my 2 cents there. But on the CRA system, if it's, and I didn't know, I've heard it for the first time. So if this is a good system and it's working for them, would it be something that you consider looking at in the studies of future pay systems? Mr. Linklater.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. First of all, in terms of the pod model, that's an innovation that came from the floor in Miramichi. It's the staff, along with unions, who suggested that we move to the entire employee pay file model, and I'm happy to pass along your words of congratulations, so thank you. In terms of the future next generation system as announced in Budget 2018, I think we need to be clear that the lead for assessing options does rest with the Treasury Board Secretariat. So while we do work very closely with them on stabilization efforts and provide our lessons learned, the actual scoping of options is being led by the Chief Information Officer at Treasury Board Secretariat. I wouldn't be in a position to offer a view as to the suitability of the CRA system going forward. I do know that it does integrate their finance and HR systems. It runs on SAP software, and it's been about 20 years in the making.
Okay, but still going back to the current system, you have 46 of the 99 government departments that are being
at the pay center. Yes,
at the pay center being. The ones that kept their own pay counselors, but that do interact with Phoenix because they're still using Phoenix, do you know what their level of satisfaction in terms of their employees being paid properly and on time and the right amounts? Is there a difference between those who kept their own pay counselors and those who were sent to the to Miramichi?
We do know that the number of outstanding or long-standing pay transactions at departments and agencies not served by the pay center is considerably lower than for those who are served by the pay center. That said, those not served by the pay center do interface with Phoenix, whether it's direct entry, web-based, however, and they do have issues with technology and linkages with their HR systems. Remember, there are still more than 30 HR systems feeding into Phoenix, and so maintaining those interfaces and ensuring data integrity remains a challenge.
Thank you very much.
Mr. McCauley.
Just to follow up Mr. Drouin's comment, I apologize. My understanding from your comments is that you said you had, or D&D had submitted the RFP, but the intent is they will submit. So
That's
thanks
right.
very
and
much.
And they're working out the arrangements of how to do so.
Thanks for clarifying that. We've been asking for a long, long time now. I hope D&D actually does follow through. So thanks for clarifying that. I just want to get back to the comment about when we'll actually start cutting steel. I think, Mr. Fillon, you said we expect to have contracts signed off early 2019. Was that correct, or when do you think we'll have it chosen?
Okay, so let me go back again to where we're at with the solicitation process for the Canadian Surface Combatant. As I said, in October, we did announce the preferred bidder, which triggered what we call the conditions precedence phase. We are negotiating with the preferred bidder on intellectual property so we can build, maintain, engineer the ship in the future. We are.
But when do you think we'll we'll move to the next.
So assuming that all goes well, and as we're continuing with the negotiations during this month, we can be in a position potentially early next year to have a contract award for the design of the ship. Now, obviously, it's conditional on the outcome of the award of the negotiation. If the negotiation turns out to be unsuccessful, then we would go to the second bidder.
Are you negotiating right now? I'm sorry?
We are in negotiation with the preferred bidder as part of the conditions precedence phase, yes.
My understanding the CITT ruling was to delay everything 90 days until they could do their review and not to do any negotiations.
Yes.
Please correct me if I'm wrong.
So there was one of the bidders filed a procurement review complaint to the Canadian International Trade Tribunal on the 21st of November. The tribunal has decided to inquire into the complaint and also issued an order to postpone the award of the contract.
Oh, I thought it was also not to continue any of the negotiation.
It's a postponement to the award of the contract. So the negotiations are ongoing. Maybe Michael, you want to add to that?
If it's not successful, then we won't have lost any time.
We've also asked Mr. McCauley, we've asked the CITT under the regulations to rescind the order prohibiting the award of the contract, given the urgency of this case. Yeah. So we've made that request to the CITT as well, so that we can proceed on schedule. Okay. But the case, of course, will be heard at the CITT, and we'll make our defense.
As long as it's not getting delayed. I'm going to get back to a Coast Guard question. The Coast Guard future capability design, why was that not rolled under the NSS under the same kind of rules?
So much like the defense policy, strong, secure, and engage, which sets a path for the future for capabilities for the Canadian Armed Forces, that was not part of the national shipbuilding strategy per se. Obviously, when the NSS was announced, there was a program of work that was also established at the time, but the long-term investments required for both the Navy and for the Canadian Armed Forces, the Navy and Coast Guard is part of a separate kind of a decision, which is a policy for the department and the forces.
Yeah. Do you agree with the way that the contract is spelled out, the way does not limit the design search to stay within Canada, or how the RFP is set up for it?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Are you happy with how the RFP is for choosing the design for that? I understand it's not as favorable to Canada as perhaps the NSS.
So, sorry, I'm having trouble hearing.
The contract, the RFP for the Coast Guard future capability, the reason I asked why it didn't go under the NSS, I understand the NSS is focusing on helping develop Canadian industry, Canadian capacity. I understand, like, for the future capability design, it's not under the NSS, therefore it does not provide the same kind of benefit to Canada. I'm just asking, is that something that you approve of, or is that an outlier, or is there a benefit to doing it that process, as opposed to following the NSS?
Well, we consider, I assume you're talking, Mr. Cully, about the 3 icebreakers?
No, the Coast Guard future capability design.
Okay, that's still like Mr. Fillon said, it's still a policy work underway. There's no active RFP for future Coast Guard design that I'm aware of.
Okay, my understanding that there is this design, future capability design for future ships on the Coast Guard, but not following the NSS kind of guidelines. Therefore, we won't see the same economic benefits, the capacity building within Canada.
We'll have to unfortunately leave it at that because we're out of time. Do we have any further questions from the government side? None? Mr. Blakey?
I have 3 minutes, but if Mr. McCauley would like to pursue his questions with those 3 minutes, he's welcome.
We have 1 3-minute intervention left.
I think maybe
Pardon me?
We have 5 minutes?
You had 5 minutes, but you ceded that time, and I'm asking, now we're down
Maybe
to
I want to unseat it so I can run out the clock so we don't have to hear Mr. McCauley for 3 more minutes.
There is a 3-minute intervention left. We've gone through a complete round, except for the 3-minute intervention that's left.
Well, I have as much right to ask questions as you do.
Sorry,
Mr. McCauley, go ahead.
Just one last question. When we did the maritime helicopter project, we had hired, we went outside, we hired Hitachi as kind of an oversight. Should we be looking at something similar to that to the frigates?
Well, as we have gone through the National Shipbuilding Strategy implementation over the last several years, we've relied quite a bit on external advice, third-party advice from different firms, whether it's on costing, scheduling, and even some of the formulation of the projects. We also get the advice from an independent advisor who is very, very experienced internationally in the delivery of ships, who's in contact with us constantly as we bounce ideas off him, and he provides us advice.
Are these as robust as perhaps the oversight that Hitachi was assisting us with the Maritime Helicopter project?
I would say that they're not the same exactly, but I would say that, having been involved in the Maritime Helicopter project myself with the National Shipbuilding Strategy, I think they're of the same kind, not exactly the same, and I think they're both very useful in the sense that they do bring a sober second thought on some of the thinking and the work that we are doing.
We also do have fairness monitors heavily involved in the procurement as well. They're in all the meetings, witnessing the process, providing observations to us as well.
Great. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you all, Madam and gentlemen, for being here. If there's any additional information that you think would be of benefit to any of our committee members or the clerk, I would suggest and encourage you to submit those pieces of information directly to our clerk. Once again, thank you for being here. I hope you all have a very happy and prosperous Christmas and New Year, and we are adjourned.